than the ones you and I learned on many, many years ago. 10 plus 10 was, is, and will be 20 for a long period of time. Why are we paying $130 for a gratuitously revised third-grade math textbook that is not online, not web-enabled, not real-time scored, not self-paced on demand?
Well, I know why we are. It's probably because the person who got that contract has a friend in government who decided to reward him by spending that money.
I call it a beer at a ball game. A beer at a ball game and buy this $130 textbook for every one of your students. It's just crazy. And so, we've been open sourcing word processors, spreadsheets, and operating systems. Why not open source and make free and available to everyone a reference implementation of third-grade math, and people can innovate on it. And we've created a repository at curriki.org that has about 45,000 free and open learning assets on the website. We've got millions of people coming to visit it and millions of web pages, and we've got about 150,000 teachers who have registered on the site. And they can search it and use it. It is the go-to place to get free and open resources that are not constrained by the standard-setting bodies in each of these little localities. I mean, how fractured is our education standard setting? So it's a great little. All we need over time here is to assemble all of this repository into clear curriculum, and we're investing our dollars to go do that. I wish everybody would go sign up to curriki.org and give us $5. If every citizen in the United States did that, we could obsolete the need for most of what the Department of Education does at the government level. At the national level.
Are you getting? Is there a lot of homeschoolers that are utilizing the website?
Homeschoolers, a lot of international folks are using it. A lot of school districts that can't afford all of the resources that they need. We have videos, we have textbooks, worksheets, science projects. It's just a fabulous go-to site. And the thing I think about is it's important that we have no child left behind, but what's more important is to not have any parent, teacher, or child held back, and that's really what this site enables.
Yeah, I think it sounds like it's a good thing that you're doing. We need to get more private sector entrepreneurial types. This maybe is a nonprofit, but we need to get free market forces operating in our educational system. All you have from the government is we need to spend more money on education. We're spending too much money on education right now. We're spending money, we're calling it education, but we're just throwing money down an educational rat hole. What we need is free market forces. We need, to spend our dollars more wisely. We need to recognize that there are a lot of kids that are in school that shouldn't be there, that should be working, and we have a lot of people in school wasting their time. Just because they're getting a degree doesn't mean they're increasing their marketable skills. And so we need to get market forces that make sure that kids that go to school belong there, and the ones that are there are studying things that make sense economically, not just going to parties.
Well, that's our goal here, is to provide skills and training tools to allow people to get jobs that pay salaries and pay taxes.
Yeah, there has to be a cost-benefit analysis, associated with education. It's not just to employ teachers and bureaucrats. It's to actually advance the skills and the knowledge of our kids so that they can take that into the workforce. And if it's not adding to that value, it doesn't make sense to have people with master's degrees driving taxi cabs or ringing cash registers. I mean, they could do that with elementary school education.
Well, the real goal, too, that we want to drive is real-time scoring. School is the one place, it seems, in the world where we don't have real-time scoring. Every CEO knows the stock price at the end of the day. Everybody going to a ball game knows the score up to the nanosecond. Anybody playing a pinball or video game knows the score up to the second. But schools are still doing the take a test and find out a week or two later. And a week or two in the life of a third grader is eternity. They don't even remember taking the test when they get it back. And there's no reason that most of the K-12 curriculum can't be made web-enabled and online, on-demand, real-time scored, and allow kids to go at their own pace, because no two kids go at the same pace on each subject across the board, yet we stuff everybody into that common cookie sheet.
And then when they do that, they've really dumbed it down so much. They put everything on a curve. There's been so much great inflation. They're afraid to fail anybody. So kids keep moving along through K through 12, regardless of whether or not they learn anything. They continue.
You're so right on that. My wife and I had our third grader. We got she's got a master's, and she went to Stanford psychology undergrad, master's in child and family counseling. And obviously, I've done a few performance reviews. I got the report card on my third grader, and we looked at the front to back, read all the fine print, all the rest of it. We couldn't figure out whether we had a moron or an Einstein on our hands because he was developing and attempting and all these other words, and we couldn't figure out where he ranked in his class. And we said this public school self-esteem thing is a disaster, and we put him into a private school. It's interesting. About 95% immigrant. I have the very clear minority kids in the school, and they put on the whiteboard who had the highest scores on tests last week right there for everybody. There's no self-esteem issues.
I know, and I think that's great. It gives kids, they're motivated. They want to see their name at the top, and they achieve. Yeah, we've really dumbed it down, and the ones we're selling short are our kids. Anyway, look, I appreciate you stopping by on my show, and thanks a lot. We're running out of time for this segment, so don't go away, everybody. We got a whole hour coming up on the Peter Schiff Show, and I will be taking your calls at 855-4SCHIFF. Welcome back. The second hour of the Peter Schiff Show is underway. I'll be taking your calls at 855-4SCHIFF, 855-4SCHIFF. The dollar sell-off seems to be gathering some more momentum. The euro is now trading above 137. It looks like it's breaking out, and just like the dollar index is rolling over here and breaking down, it's right now right up against kind of like a key trend line where we've been in a little bit of an uptrend since making the more recent lows. It is, though, a bearish formation, and it is breaking down. And to me, I think we could see some significant dollar weakness in the immediate future, meaning today, tomorrow, through the course of the week. As I said before, earlier in the show and yesterday, the fact that it couldn't rally, right, when you have bullish news and the market doesn't respond in a bullish way, that's normally very negative. And so when you have turmoil around the world and the dollar doesn't rally as a result of it, that's very bearish for the dollar. Now, one thing we have had is a rally in the Treasury bond market. We had a pretty good rally yesterday, despite the fact that the dollar did not rally. In fact, in many ways, in the short run, a weak dollar tends to be supportive of the Treasury bond market, even though intuitively you would think it would be the reverse. But what happens is, as the dollar is weakening, foreign central banks end up stepping up their dollar purchases to slow down the dollar's descent. Now, at some point, they won't do that anymore, but they're still desperately trying to keep it afloat. And so as foreign central banks buy more dollars, they then recycle them into treasuries, and that does put a bid in the treasury market. And also maybe people are looking at the big surge in oil prices as being a drag on the economy, weakening the economy, the result being that the Fed will be easier, that there might be more quantitative easing in order to offset the contractionary effects of higher oil prices. But, of course, in the long run, that is very bearish for treasuries, even if it might create a short-term bid in the market. Ultimately, a more expansionary monetary policy is purely more inflation, and inflation is the enemy of somebody who holds a 10-year or a 30-year treasury. So I don't think this treasury rally is going to last. In fact, if the dollar keeps falling, the bond market should follow the dollar lower. The question is, will anybody in America care? Probably not. Anyway, I wanted to take a little break and play a clip from yesterday from Senator Harry Reid in Nevada, who recently survived, a challenge to re-election from Tea Party favorite Sharon Angle. And, we've got all these problems now that Harry Reid really needs to be paying attention to in Washington, yet what does he decide he needs to speak about? What does he think is the best thing that Nevada can do to get its economy moving? Well, he thinks that they should ban prostitution. Anyway, listen to what he had to say yesterday. This is cut number 8.
Nevada needs to be known as the first place for innovation and investment, not the last place where prostitution is still legal. When the nation thinks about Nevada, it should think about the world's newest ideas and newest careers, not about its oldest profession. We should do everything we can to make sure the world holds Nevada in the same high regard you and I do. If we want to attract business to Nevada that puts people back to work, the time has come to outlaw prostitution.
Well, first of all, I mean, does Harry Reid not even understand his state? Has he ever been to Las Vegas? Has he even seen the commercials? You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I mean, what does he think that they're talking about there? I mean, how does he think by putting prostitutes out of work, he's going to put other people to work? I'd like to see the study that shows that somehow legalized prostitution somehow inhibits innovation and investment. I mean, for all I know, it's probably the reverse. I mean, a lot of people who are very innovative, a lot of the techies, they're kind of nerdy. Probably the fact that prostitution is legal, maybe it takes some of the stress out. Maybe they're able to be more innovative when they don't have to spend so much time trying to get women to go out with them the old-fashioned way or the new way. But what I really want to talk about is this whole idea of prostitution. Why is prostitution illegal anyway? I mean, if you're talking about a victimless crime, it's hard to think of a victim in prostitution. If anybody wants to challenge me on this, I mean, certainly child prostitution, I mean, forced prostitution should be illegal. I certainly think people should not be walking the streets. But one of the reasons that you have so much prostitution on the streets outside of Nevada is because it is illegal. I mean, when you outlaw prostitution doesn't stop. The activity just continues illegally. I mean, just like, drugs are illegal, but people are doing drugs. I mean, if you outlaw prostitution, it's not going to go away. It's just going to happen illegally. But why is it illegal anyway? I mean, think about this. If I wanted to pay two people to have sex with each other, that's perfectly legal, right? It's not illegal to film a pornographic movie. The porn actors and actresses, they're not in jail. So if I can pay two people to have sex and put it on camera, in fact, if I wanted to produce my own pornographic movie, I can pay actresses to have sex with me, and if I put it on camera, then somehow I'm not breaking the law. But if I pay someone to have sex with me and I don't film it, that's illegal. It doesn't make any sense. If you have two people, you have, a guy has money and he wants to give it to a woman who wants the money and is willing to trade sex for money. Who's getting hurt there? Especially if it takes place behind closed doors. If somebody can pick up the phone and call a woman, and why is it the government's business? Why should anybody care what's going on and be behind closed doors? Who is hurt by this? So it never made any sense to me why something like prostitution should be against the law or outlawed. At least it's not a federal issue, right? This is done on a state-to-state basis, and I guess Nevada is the only state, is it, that where prostitution is legal? It's not actually legal within the city limits of Las Vegas. You actually have to go outside, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, there's prostitutes all over Las Vegas. I mean, the fact that it's not legal doesn't stop it from happening, but the fact is, why should it be? I mean, if anybody who's listening to this show has any idea as to why it's the government's business and what purpose is being served by preventing this. I mean, I can call up, I can have a date with a girl and a woman, and I can spend thousands of dollars on wining and dining her and buying her expensive gifts. That's perfectly legal, right? But it's illegal if you just spend a couple $100 and you skip all the wining and dining and all the gifts. And if you just go, then somehow that's illegal. I don't see that the distinction there. Anyway, we got a lot of people that are waiting on hold. Maybe they want to talk about this topic. Maybe they want to talk about something else. But the real thing is, we got a lot of problems in Washington D.C. that Senator Harry Reid needs to be worrying about. Least of which is whether or not prostitution is legal or not in Nevada. Anyway, let me go to Lee calling from Atlanta. How you doing, Lee?
Hi, Lee, or Peter. I just want to resume my question that you took before the interview. I know that there are risks associated with getting a margin account, which is what I was trying to avoid by getting a loan from a bank when I wouldn't get a margin call.
Oh, the banks are not going to. So the banks are going to loan on your collateral, and no matter how much the stocks go down, they're not going to ask you to cough up more money.
Yeah, right. They're going to give me, say a loan-to-value ratio of like 60%, so I have plenty of buffer.
Yeah. Well, then you don't have to worry about that, but I still think it's a risky strategy. My bet would be if you want to buy more gold, just sell your stocks and buy more gold. I mean, why get involved with a loan? Why pay interest? If you want to buy gold, buy gold. If you want more leverage, buy gold stocks. You got plenty of leverage to the upside, and then, don't go on margin. Don't buy more gold coins. Just sell the stocks that you have and buy some gold stocks, because I think they're undervalued relative to bullion. I think they have a pretty big move coming. So if you want to take risk with your money, I wonder how much applause Senator Harry Reid would have got yesterday had he proposed making gambling illegal in the state of Nevada. After all, there's a lot more harm that results from gambling than prostitution. I mean, people lose lots of money gambling. People get addicted to it. I mean, people's lives are ruined because of gambling. I don't know that that's happening because of prostitution. Some people say that, well, the reason that prostitution is illegal is because it exploits women. It's the exploitation of women. Actually, it's making it illegal. That's what exploits women, because you're taking away the woman's right to choose what she does with her own body. As I said, forced prostitution is definitely illegal, and there's nobody that would say that would be legal. But if somebody makes a decision that this is what they want to do, I mean, if you can give sex away, you can. A woman can sleep with as many men as she wants. No one's going to say she can't. But if she charges one, and what if she's very discriminating? If she only sleeps with very few people, but just charges them. I mean, why is that wrong? So you can be totally promiscuous as long as you don't accept any money. But of course, you can accept gifts. You can accept all the gifts you want. The whole thing is crazy. But anyway, as I said, I'd like somebody to call and defend why they think prostitution should be illegal if they agree with Senator Harry Reid. But anyway, let me keep taking some calls. Next up is Chris calling from Freehold, New Jersey. Chris, you there?
Schiff.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hey, with this whole stock market thing that's going on, do you think that this is the tip of the iceberg of another possible collapse, or do you think this is just a short-term correction?
Yeah, as I said, I've been saying, I don't think there's a huge drop coming in the stock market. I do believe that we are headed lower. I think that we'll go below 12,000 rather on the Dow, maybe around 1,180. But I think there's still a powerful uptrend in the market, and I don't see any evidence that trend is going to break. Now, I could change my mind. I mean, if we do break below, maybe go down to 11,500, maybe we'll have a bigger correction. Maybe we'll move back down to 10,000 or slightly below that. But right now, I don't necessarily see any evidence that is going to happen. But it certainly could happen. But I still think that what is going to be happening is that the dollar is going to be losing value. Gold is going to be rising. And so in terms of other currencies, in terms of real money like gold, I think that we could see a precipitous move down in U.S. stocks, which is why I don't own them. Even though I think that they are rising, it's only in terms of dollars. I think they're falling in terms of all the other things that you could do with your money other than buy stocks. You could, I think it still makes more sense to stock up on food than buy the Dow Jones or the S&P 500. I think that the products that are on the grocery store shelves are going to move up in price faster than U.S. stocks. I think the gasoline that you're putting in your tank, I think gas prices will go up faster than stock prices.
Okay, so this so-called bull market that they're saying we're in is just purely inflationary, basically.
Yeah,
right?
It's an illusion. That's one of the reasons the government likes illusion, because people think they're getting richer even as they're getting poorer. And, and as I said yesterday, people still like to use the rising stock market to try to discredit me, as if I'm calling for the market to collapse. I'm calling for it to collapse in real terms when you price it in gold, but I'm not calling it for it to collapse in dollar terms, because I'm calling for the dollar to collapse. And if the dollar collapses, stock prices measured in dollars are going to rise. Now, they're not going to rise every day, but that's what's going to happen. I mean, stock prices are going through the roof in Zimbabwe, but but people aren't wealthier because they own Zimbabwe stocks. They're just not as poor as they would have been if they owned Zimbabwe bonds.
Yeah, and it just shows the downward pressure on houses still in effect, because I think the numbers just came in. Home prices fell another 2.5% in December.
Yeah, I still think houses will go down. I mean, I think even with inflation, I think housing prices, because the glut of homes on the market is just so enormous, and the dearth of buyers out there. And I think more people are going to lose their jobs. More people are going to be spending money on food and energy. They're not going to have money for rent or to buy houses. So even with all this inflation, I still expect nominal real estate prices to trend lower. It's not going to be until we get runaway inflation or real hyperinflation, if it gets that bad, that we're going to start to see real estate prices rise. But if we get hyperinflation, then I think the real decline in real estate prices will be even more spectacular, meaning how low real estate prices go in terms of gold or silver or, wheat or corn or anything else. Because hyperinflation would be a disaster for the real price of real estate.
Okay, yeah. So my last thing is, I saw bond yields down to like 4.7 from 4.7. How does that work in relation to what's going on in the stock market?
Yeah, I just mentioned that the other day, that I thought that there was a move into bonds because I think people are thinking that this weakness in the stock market and rising oil prices will maybe cause the Fed to be more easy because it's going to weaken or undermine the economy, which is generally seen as favorable for bonds, and also because of the renewed weakness of the dollar. I think that means central banks, are stepping up their treasury purchases because they have to recycle the dollars that they're buying in order to support the dollar. So I think some of that is going on, but I think that the trend has turned. I think interest rates are headed higher, meaning bond prices are headed lower. So I think that this will only be a short-term move. Maybe when it comes to the 10-year, yields might fall back down to about 3.3 to 3.4, but that's it. And then I would expect them to start heading higher again as far as the yields on the 30-year. I don't think the 30-year yield is going to go much lower than it is right now. I think it's right up against a longer-term trend line. I would expect this trend to hold. And I think you're going to start to see bond yields ticking back up.
Excellent. Thanks for taking my call, Peter.
Thanks for the call. Next up is Lynn Ann from Albuquerque, New Mexico. You're on with Peter Schiff.
Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I called a couple weeks ago, but you didn't have time to take my call. I was really hoping to get on that day. It was so interesting when you were talking about President Obama and these investments into high-speed rail. You come look at New Mexico, for crying out loud. We just built this high-speed train from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, and the thing has been a total and complete waste of money. It's already needing subsidies to keep it going. They're shutting down the days that it actually runs. It's just amazing how much money Governor Richardson threw at that project.
The fact that the government would try to get involved in high-speed rail when they can't even handle low-speed rail. I mean, if you look at the complete failure of something like the Amtrak system here in the Northeast, the government can't even operate those trains. How is it going to take it up a notch and get involved in this massive high-speed rail process? And, of course, we're broke. They don't understand that when you're broke, you spend less, not more. Right? You look for ways to cut back on government spending, not new grandiose projects to launch.
Yeah, they can't seem to get that straight. I wanted to also mention, too, I'm reading your father's book, The Biggest Con, and it's very interesting.
That's a great book. If you want, why don't you hold on over the break? We'll talk about it when the next commercial is ended. You're listening to The Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show. We now return to the Peter Schiff Show. Call in now, 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433. Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Peter Schiff on SchiffRadio.com, and I am on the line right now with Lynn Ann from Albuquerque. I think, Lynn, you had a question about my dad's book, The Biggest Con, or you wanted to say something about it?
Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to let you know that I was reading it, and it's just to see the influence that you've had, I think, from a very early age. I mean, your father, at least from what I can gather in the book, seems like a very brilliant man. He has some pretty compelling arguments and ideas.
Yeah, and it's an excellent book. I mean, in fact, I've read it several times over the years, and actually, when I read that book, I can actually hear my father's voice, in the words. But it's an excellent book, well written. It was very timely, And if you read it today and look at how many things my father wrote that have already come true, and it's unfortunate that the warnings that he had at that time were not heeded, because if they were, we would not be in the mess that we're in today.
Well, interesting from my perspective too. I wish I had come across you and your father much earlier, because I've been a saver all my life, and if I'd have been saving in gold and silver from an early age, I'd be in a much different position right now.
No question about that. But hopefully you've changed now, and you're no longer saving dollars, and you are accumulating some gold or silver or some foreign stocks, or doing something to protect yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I have two questions for you. One is with respect to municipal bonds. What do you think about the double tax-free incentives that are offered by the federal and state governments? I mean, doesn't that almost equate to being able to deduct home mortgage interest? Do you see what I'm saying?
I don't think from an investor standpoint, it's not going to entice me, because I know that the real tax is inflation, which taxes my principal. So I don't think that it's worth it to simply buy these bonds and just enjoy a lower rate of tax on my interest income. I'm concerned about the purchasing power of my interest and, more importantly, my principal, and I think there's no protection there in these municipal bonds. But if your question is, should they be tax exempt? I mean, certainly the states can decide that they can exempt from taxation the interest that they're paying. I mean, that's up to them to do. Now, the federal government, I think the reason that the federal government can't tax the state bonds and vice versa has to do with the Supreme Court decision, because the power to tax involves the power to destroy. So I think there's some legal issues that are involved as to why the interest is not taxed.
I just thought that perhaps it might lead the general public to believe that there's more safety associated with these types of
people think
when in reality there aren't.
Well, people assume they're safe because they're government guaranteed, whether it's the treasuries or the municipal bond is guaranteed by the full taxing power of the state. If it's a general obligation bond, or if it's some type of revenue bond, the interest and principals are secured by the revenue that whatever the service, whether it's a sewer system or a water system or or highways, whatever revenues, or a toll road or something, that the revenue is being generated. And of course, these securities are rated or insured, and often they have very high ratings from S&P or Moody's, or insured. But what nobody pays attention to is the risk of inflation, the risk of purchasing power, and that risk is very real. But when Standard & Poor's rates something and they put a AA or a AAA rating, they are not rating purchasing power. They're simply saying, what is the likelihood that you get your money back? They're not giving their opinion at all on what the likelihood is that you get your money back that you can actually spend because it has value. That they're not being paid to rate that. All they care about is you buy a bond for $100,000. Are you going to get your $100,000 back? If when you get it back, all you can do is buy a pack of chewing gum, S&P doesn't care about that. If you got your $100,000 back, then as far as they're concerned, you got all your money back, regardless of whether it buys anything.
My second question, I've heard you mention the term hedonics, and I've looked it up, and I've actually read it, but I can't actually find a true definition for it. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that for me just a bit.
I don't know if I know what the definition is. I know what it is, and it's what they do is they try to adjust for the impact of something on the index. So, for example, if a computer is 10 times faster than the computer was before, but the price is higher, they will adjust it through the concept of hedonics, and they will say, well, it's not actually more expensive. It's actually less expensive because, yes, you're paying more, but you're getting such a much better machine than the one you had before. So it's that concept of hedonics that enables the guys that compile the CPI to adjust prices to reflect what they perceive to be this increase in quality of the product. And so because of the subjective improvement in quality, they can turn a price increase into a price cut, or they can make a price that was unchanged, they can turn it into a price cut. And so it really distorts the overall CPI, because they didn't used to do that. They used to simply take the price of a basket of goods, and they didn't interject their opinion as to whether they thought the quality improved or went up or down.